God delivered the Jewish people on Passover and Purim. He's doing the same today. Ahead of the Passover holiday, CBN News sat down with famous Soviet refugenik Natan Sharansky. His emigration from the former Soviet Union to Israel in 1986 paved the way for the exodus of 2 million Soviet Jews. He told CBN News about how God miraculously delivered the Jewish people in and from the former Soviet Union, just like on Purim and Passover.
Natan Sharansky, welcome to Jerusalem Dayline. We're now between two important Jewish holidays when the Jewish people were saved, Purim and Passover. What's the significance of that in this?
Well, you know, in Agadah, it is said that in every generation there are people who raise against us. All the idea of Seder Pesach or celebration is to remind that the challenges are the same and to remind ourselves about the power of our people when we are guided by God. So I think we are lucky to be in the generation which went through the miracle of Purim and through powerful liberation of Exodus from Egypt. I was 5 years old when Stalin died, and my father explained to me that it's a great day for us, for Jews. I should remember all my life, this miracle happened, we are saved. He didn't tell me that that is the day of Purim. Even if he told me, I was absolutely assimilated. We grew disconnected from anything Jewish. But that was the day of Purim, and Stalin died while planning the biggest massacre of Jewish people after Holocaust. The leading Jewish Soviet doctors were already arrested. They were tortured. They were accused in poisoning the leaders of the Soviet Union. Their trial and public execution was planned on Pesach, which means months after Purim. It had to bring to a lot of anger and pogroms. There was already prepared the letter of Russian Jewish leaders to Stalin, asking him to save Jewish people from the justified anger of Russian people. And then hundreds of thousands of Jews had to be taken from Moscow, Leningrad, Kiev, and other places, and sent to Siberia. And it was planned that at least 1/3 of them will die already on their way there. And then Purim came and Stalin died. So everybody who knows the story of Purim can understand the power of this comparison. And I go to kindergarten and I do what father told me, what everybody does. Everybody is crying about Stalin and I'm crying. We are singing songs about the son of all the people, Stalin, and I'm also singing. And I have no idea how many children are really crying or how many of them are crying exactly as I, because we know that it's very good that Stalin died. So that was the beginning of my life of loyal Soviet citizen, of double think. When you know that all the life around you, it's all lies. But the truth can be only kept for your family, for your people. And you're not fighting for anything, because there are no values except the value of survival.
That wasn't the end of the story for Sharansky, Soviet Jewry, or Jews around the world. There were other miracles in the works.
And then later, after 1967, when Israel entered our lives, and you understand that all the world looks on you and says, how you guys did it. The world connects me to Israel, and you don't understand this connection. And in the underground, we start reading the books which were brought by Jewish tourists from abroad, about Exodus from Egypt. And suddenly you realize that your history doesn't begin from Bolshevik Revolution, from 1917. But your history, if you decide that that is your history, starts from Exodus from Egypt. And it continues through thousands of years. And there are people who say we are family, Jews all over the world. And there is state of Israel which is ready to send airplanes to the end of the world to bring you freedom. That's when you find strength to start fighting for your rights, for rights of other Jews, and for the freedom. And that's how you became activist of Zionist movement and the human rights movement of the Soviet Union.
Sharansky became known as a refusenik, a Jew who was refused permission to leave the Soviet Union and immigrate to Israel. Sentenced to 14 years, he served 9, largely for spreading truth about human rights abuses in the Soviet Union.
They came 10 years after I was released from prison to Soviet Union as a minister of Israel. And they insisted that I will visit not only official meetings of the ministers, but also KGB prison where I spent a year and a half of interrogation. And they took my wife there. And when asked by the journalists, why are you doing it? Isn't it painful? I said, to the contrary, I always think that was the most powerful empire of our time. It controlled 1/3 of the world. KGB was the most sinister, most dangerous secret police in the world. And the leaders of KGB are explaining me that everything is finished. All the Jewish activists are arrested. The world is afraid to mention our names. I knew that it's a lie, but I was absolutely isolated. Now, Soviet Union doesn't exist. KGB doesn't exist. 2 million Jews left Soviet Union. More than 1 million lives in Israel. And all the world is a different place. And that will come when we go back to our identity, to our values, when we hear the voice of God, and when we're united in this struggle. So miracles of Purim and definitely the miracles of Exodus from Egypt happened in our generation.
It's called the bread of affliction, and Jewish people eat it for a week as a reminder of God's deliverance from Egypt. Every year, Jewish people around the world celebrate the Exodus from Egypt with a Passover Seder. One of the key elements is unleavened bread or matzah. And if a whole country eats matzah for a week, that's a lot of matzah. Take a look at how they make matzah in Israel. The Bible calls it the bread of affliction, unleavened bread or matzah. Every year, the Jewish people are commanded to retell the story of their exodus from Egypt and to eat unleavened bread for 7 days.
Because the Lord made them live very fast, they had to make bread that didn't have time to rise, and they ate this flat bread, which is matzah.
Most Israelis take the commandment to eat unleavened bread very seriously, and many actually like it. Grocery stores like this one devote whole sections to it. And besides regular matzah, you can get egg, whole wheat, and even choco matzah.
The regular matzah must be made of flour and water only. The flour would look to you and like regular flour, but it's not regular flour.
Roy Wolf is vice president of Matzot Aviv. He told CBN News the whole process, from mixing to rolling to shaping to baking, must be finished in 18 minutes, because the moment water touches the flour, it starts rising.
In reality, our process is much, much faster. We want to be as efficient as possible, and the whole process takes no longer than 3-4 minutes. But every 15 minutes, in order to avoid to have any leftovers of leavened dough, we have to clean the mixer system.
Wolf is the 6th generation to work in his family's business, which started in 1887. They've been in the current factory since 1946.
In the basements here where we have the flour silos today, the Haganah, the first defense forces, used to hide the weapons from the British mandate. Since 1946 we've been here making matzah. Of course, the factory was refurbished several times.
At Matzot Aviv, they make about 20 tons of matzah per day. They start in October and work around the clock for the last month, except on the Sabbath, to provide matzah to Jewish communities in Israel and around the world.
We are exporting to over 35 countries, to all Jewish communities around the world. From the large communities in North America to even the smallest community. There's one person that's in Wallis Island. He's the doctor of the island, and we are sending him matzah every year. And so he will be able to have a seder with matzah from Israel. But we also have Christian communities buying matzah in countries like Korea and Singapore, where it's I've been told that in some churches it's been used as the holy bread.
The Last Supper would have been a Passover Seder with unleavened bread. Because of that, many Christians like to take communion with matzah. Some even say that the design of the matzah, striped and pierced, is symbolic of the Messiah himself. You might think with all this matzah making that the Wolf family would get tired of Passover, but not so.
We're waiting for this Seder. We usually come very tired to the Seder because I'm working until the same day in the afternoon. But it means a lot. This holiday, of course, means a lot to us.
One Israeli compared matzah to a data drive, passing along information from generation to generation. The Passover has been celebrated now for thousands of years. And to all our Jewish friends, Hag Pesach Sameach. Happy Passover. Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. You can also access CBN content through our CBN News and other CBN apps. And don't forget to sign up for our email blast so you can continue to receive all of our exciting CBN content. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time.